Welcome in, everybody. Vasu Vaddiparty, Charlie O here with you. This is the Make the Money and Run Friday Football Show podcast for October 22nd, 2021. Welcome into everybody on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter live. If you miss any of the live broadcasts, you can always download and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Google, iHeart, Spotify, SoundCloud, anywhere you see the Make the Money and Run symbol, you can find it up there. And in fact, we'll get to that in a second. We're here every Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Started a little bit earlier. If you caught us on the Friday baseball show, we talked about Game 6 tonight for the Astros and Red Sox. Game 6 tomorrow night for the Dodgers and Braves. Both the Dodgers and the Red Sox looking to go to Game 7. As I said, you can download and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. If you missed the live show, you can download and subscribe to that. Don't forget, every day, Monday through Friday, 6 Eastern, every day for the latest news and our selections for each day. On the weekends, it's a little different. 3 times on Saturday starting at 11 a.m. Eastern, and then twice on Sunday starting at noon Eastern to get there for all the action of NCAA football, NFL football, and all the MLB playoffs. The NBA has started, the NHL as well, too. But this is the Friday Football Show. We're sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Cupertino. Check them out at 408-252-7262, BritanniaArmsDeanza.com. They will cater to your office parties. They will set up your group events on site. And they've got weekday specials going on as well, too. 20 TVs for all your sports viewing, sports action. Check out all your games, your fantasy football as well, too. All right, Charlie, week 7.
And we always fail to mention, Vasu, it is the home of all soccer. Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, all of those places, man. I mean, they love the worldwide football. So
we do. Yeah, we should mention that as well, too. They do open up early in the mornings for the football. I've been there for World Cup games. Very interesting scenario that we have. All right, let's start with the NFL week 7. Cleveland Browns last night, they were -1 and 41 versus Denver. They get the win 17-14 on Thursday Night Football. The Browns now 4-3, the Broncos 3-4. No Baker Mayfield. Case Keenum played well last night. Dearness Johnson with no Kareem Hunt, no Nick Chubb, runs for 140 yards. And the Broncos defense looked very poor. Teddy Bridgewater did not have any time to throw the ball. In fact, he was off. They had a couple of chances to score a touchdown. He throws a very, very, very ill-timed pick in the end zone that could have at least got them a field goal or could have had them take the lead. But that was a game the Broncos should have won, I thought, Charlie. I had Denver. I bought a half a point. I bought them to +2. And I thought for sure that they were going to come out and win, especially the way that they played and looked against the Raiders. And this is a chance for them to take on a Cleveland team that was very debilitated. Not only a quarterback, they didn't have Jadeveon Clowney on defense, and their running game was not as good, although Dearness Johnson looked like Kareem Hunt or Nick Chubb last night. But there we go. There's the scenario that you have. The Browns now 4-3. They put a little pressure on the Ravens, who are 5-1. The best in the AFC. The Bengals play the Ravens this weekend. They're 4-2. And then the Steelers are 3-3 coming into this weekend as well.
Yeah, it was very interesting. You know, one of the questions we asked yesterday was who was going to run the ball for Cleveland. Well, now we know it was Johnson who picked up a mere 146 yards in the game yesterday. I think what was it? He has 198 total yards on the season now, but he had 146 yards in the game yesterday. So just came at Denver in an unbelievable way. I mean, they just weren't ready for him. And I heard somebody say, once again, for everybody who says never draft a running back in an early round in the NFL draft, their theory became totally true because Johnson was not even drafted. So he comes in for the injured Chubb and just runs with abandon and help put Cleveland in the position to win that game last night. And one thing we should probably mention right up front, Vasu, is we also know now that Baker Mayfield, it's not just the labrum on the left side. It is also now we know that there is a break in the humerus, which is from the shoulder down to the elbow. And as one of the guys on Sports Center said this morning, we know that is not
funny. Yeah, not funny. Humorous is not funny. Not this time.
I cannot take credit for that. I stole that line. But
send it back. Honestly,
it is a serious situation. Now Baker says he's going to play through it without going to surgery. He wasn't going to get surgery on the labrum, which eventually will have to have surgery. But you've got to wonder about how long he can play with both a break. It's probably a hairline fracture at this point if he's considering to still play. But you've got to wonder how long he can hang in there. I mean, that's a lot of injury at that point. And I want him to play. I like Baker. I like Cleveland being competitive. But, man, that's a lot of injury to your quarterback at that point. And Case Keenum, God bless him. He's a nice guy. Well. But I don't think he can keep Cleveland competitive over the course of the entire season.
Well, I'll be interested to see what happens with Baker Mayfield. Obviously, he wants to play through it, and they probably will not get to the playoffs. As it is, they were struggling coming into the game last night. Case Keenum did play well. The thing that he had going for him was Kevin Stefanski was his offensive coordinator in Minnesota through the good year that he had there when they went to the playoffs, and the miracle in Minnesota with the Stephon Diggs catch that beat the Saints on the last play of the game. They are 4-3. They're a half game back of the Bengals, who play Baltimore this weekend. As we said, 5-1 for Baltimore, Cincinnati 4-2, and then Pittsburgh at 3-3. Some of the games, some of the buys this week that we have, we got to look at this for fantasy football now. Buffalo, Dallas, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, the Los Angeles Chargers, and Jacksonville are the teams that are on bye this week. Denver, Cleveland played last night. Some of the games that we'll get into this weekend, Washington, Green Bay, be an interesting game between Green Bay. They're 5-1 as well in the NFC North. They're tied for second best record in the NFC with the Cowboys, the Buccaneers, and the Rams. Of course, everybody looking up to the 6-0 Cardinals, and the Cardinals have the Houston Texans this week. We'll get to the point spreads in a second, but I got a feeling it's not Buffalo, Houston, but it's pretty high up there for that line for Arizona, Houston. That's a late game on CBS. My Bears are going to go in. 4 starters now out for the Buccaneers. Just came out. Gronkowski, one of them as well, are not going to play this weekend for Tampa Bay. They're about a 2-touchdown underdog going into the house of Brady, Tampa Bay right now. Indianapolis, San Francisco, Sunday Night Football. Very interested to see how Jimmy Garoppolo comes back after the Trey Lance experiment. They had the bye week last week. He got hurt running all those quarterback plays that they ran, the read option plays, and he got hit a lot. And they he's not on the injured list, but he definitely will be out a couple of weeks. That bye week certainly helped. But the other games this weekend, we mentioned Cincinnati, Baltimore. That's a huge game. If Cincinnati somehow can pull off the upset, they're about a 7-point underdog to Baltimore. In Baltimore, Joe Burrow's had a great year. Jamar Chase has turned into a really good rookie receiver. Their defense, they've got a pass rush. If they can do what the Chargers couldn't do last week and kind of corral Lamar Jackson in a semicircle where he can't escape to the outside, then they've got a chance to win this game because Joe Mixon is a really good running back. Baltimore's defense has not been great this year. They have not stopped the run as well as they have in the past. So some of those games that are going to be on this weekend as well. What are you looking at, Charlie, as far as this week for games for week 7?
Wow, there's some very interesting games. You just talked about Lamar Jackson, a stat that I saw early this morning. He's the NFL's only player right now that has 1,500 plus passing yards and 300 plus rushing yards. That's tough to shut down. If he's not passing, he's running. And if he's running, he's not passing, but he's going to do something. That's a lot to do. And I'm loving the Bengals right now, but that's going to be a toughie. That's going to be a toughie for Cincinnati this week. And they're doing really well, but that's going to be a tough one. I wish I felt better about that one, but I don't. I'm interested in that San Francisco Indianapolis game. I don't like saying things like must-win games in week 7, but I kind of feel like for both of those teams at this point, with the way things have been going for them so far, that's kind of where we are right now with them, because Indianapolis there were great expectations and they have not met them, and they're falling backwards very quickly in their conference, and they need to keep up, and they lose now and go 2-5, they're in big trouble. For San Francisco, they've got to stay competitive in the West, and they've got a chance against a team that's not doing well. And we've always said, you've got to eat your young. And that's so they've got to take advantage of this opportunity. Garoppolo's been off a little bit now. He should be healthy. They need to take advantage of this opportunity. If they do not take advantage for this opportunity, you know what the 49ers need to do? They need to be looking to move Garoppolo at this point, because that's probably what they're going to do at the end of the season anyway. They're probably not going to pick up that option. So they might as well, because what's the trade deadline?
I thought it was November 4th. Does that sound right?
I think so. I think they're coming up on it. So at this point, if they fall back, then it's time to start going next year. I mean, I again, of course, now, I'm the Bill Walsh trigger. Better to be early rather than be late. But, I don't sell the season tickets. I don't sell the concessions. So it's easy for me to say, but you know what? Arizona's going to be 7-0 after this weekend. Let's just face the facts. If they lose and are sitting at 3-5, good night, nurse. You better wrap it up and start getting ready for next year.
Let's hit some of the NFC games right now before we get to the AFC. Some of the lines that are out there. The New York Giants are a 3-point underdog at home to the Carolina Panthers. The total 43. Carolina's lost 3 in a row after starting off 3-0. Obviously, no McCaffrey, a big deal there. Sam Darnold's played okay. He's got some rushing touchdowns, passing touchdowns as well too. But McCaffrey, the big difference maker there in their 3 losses since coming back. The Washington football team is going to go to Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. 8-point favorite. Seems, I'm not sure if that's the right number. It might be higher by the time game time happens. 48.5. Washington's offense, pretty good. Green Bay's defense, suspect at times. But then you got number 12 behind the under center there for Green Bay. 8-point favorite, 48.5. More NFC games. The Atlanta Falcons are going to have an interconference game. They're going to Miami. When did the Atlanta Falcons become a favorite? They're 2.5-point favorites. I didn't think Miami was in that much of a turmoil, but apparently they are. 47.5 for that interconference matchup between Atlanta and Miami. The Detroit Lions, the Jared Goff Bowl, he's going to return to Los Angeles. They're going to take on the Rams and Matthew Stafford facing his old team. Of course, the Lions are 0-6, the Rams 5-1. The Rams are 16 points. 16 points, Charlie, 1/6 in the NFL, 50.5. The Eagles are going to Las Vegas. They're a 3-point underdog, 48.5 there. And Chicago and Tampa Bay, 11.5 for Tampa Bay. The 4 players that we just mentioned, including Gronkowski, out. 47 the total. Arizona, 17.5. Arizona is over Houston, 47.5. And then Indianapolis, San Francisco in the NFC. San Francisco, 4-point favorite, 43.5. They've got to stop that running game of Indianapolis right now because they are running the ball well. Jonathan Taylor, Naheem Hines. They've got some good players on the team. Looks like Carson Wentz playing a little bit better. And then on Monday night, which we'll hit on Monday a lot more, but the New Orleans Saints, a 5-point favorite on the road at Seattle. Seattle struggling right now. Geno Smith, their quarterback. Russell Wilson will be out for a few more weeks on injured reserve. Did we lose Charlie? I must have lost Charlie. So anyway, that's what's going on in the NFL right now. We'll get Charlie O back on in a second. But some of the games that we're talking about here in the NFC, Washington, Green Bay, Packers 5-1. They've got the Washington football team. They are 2-4. They're 3 back already of the Dallas Cowboys. Philadelphia 2-4, and the Giants at 1-5. The Giants had that one win against the Saints a few weeks ago in overtime. Green Bay 5-1. They're 2 games better than Minnesota and Chicago at 3-3. And then, of course, Detroit, we said 0-6. They got murdered by the Cincinnati Bengals over the weekend last weekend. Tampa Bay 5-1 over the Saints, who had a bye last week. The Saints come back, and they will have the Seattle Seahawks on Monday night on the road. So they get a bye, and they don't have to play till Monday night again. Arizona 6-0. New Orleans, as we bring Charlie back, the NFC games here. I don't know what happened there, Charlie, but, 21st century internet. We're just talking about some of the standings in the NFC and the NFC games that we went. The Saints had a bye last week, and they don't have to come back and play until Monday night. So that's 11 days off. That's actually 2 weeks off and a day from their last game that they played. 3-2 is New Orleans, Carolina 3-3, Atlanta 2-3 as they also had a bye. And they are, I don't know if you heard me say the part about how is Atlanta favored on the road at Miami, the way Atlanta has played this year. And I didn't realize Miami was in that turmoil.
One of the reasons why Atlanta is favored is the fact that this is only the 5th time in the history of the NFL having teams going to play in London that a team is coming back and not had a bye week after playing in over across the pond. So that's one of the reasons why Miami is not favored there, is because they're coming back from that trip and didn't get a bye week. So that's one of the things that's playing into that. Plus the fact that, frankly, Tua has been a disappointment, and he's never had back-to-back 300-yard games. So you take all of that and kind of put that all together, and a really lousy Atlanta team all of a sudden is a favorite.
I'm trying to go back to the lines here and see what the line is on the game. It's 2.5 for Atlanta. That total's 47.5. You might want to take the over in that game because Atlanta hasn't stopped anybody yet in that scenario. All right, the other NFC games that you're looking at, Charlie, the other NFC teams you're looking at before we take a break?
It's hang on a second here. When we lost the internet, I lost a lot of things here. NFC wise, oh, by the way, just talking quickly about that Rams Lions game. I know that number 16 is huge, but it's the bloody Lions.
Yeah.
They're 0-6. And you got Stafford playing his old team. You got Goff playing his old team. Poor Goff.
Don't mess with wounded animals, though, because they were a 10-point underdog to the Vikings 2 weeks ago, and that was my favorite play of the week, was taking the Lions at +10 against the Vikings. Now, I know the Vikings are not the Rams, and then they are playing at home in Los Angeles at SoFi, but 16 points for a team that turf is not – it's not like the turf's going to come up, and their receivers are not bad. I know we don't know a lot about the Detroit Lions wide receivers, but TJ Hawkinson's there. They've got a running game. Jared Goff is not a bad passer. And don't you think they want to get off that 0-6 mark right away with the Rams and Jared Goff? How sweet would it be to get your first victory of the year against your former team that your former coach kind of derailed through the press last year during the summer?
Yeah, well, let me tell you two things. Number one, the Lions are awful. Number two, they need a coaching change again, because this cat is not a head coach. Okay. He may be Starbucks number 1 customer, and he may like to gnaw on people's legs.
He's number 1 through number 10,
but come on. Who in the world is running that organization? The people who basically own the Ford Motor Company own that team, and they can't figure out how to run a football team. What in the world is going on there? That is so stupid.
No doubt about it.
Dumb.
Well, the Dallas Cowboys, Minnesota Vikings, the 2 NFC teams that have a bye this week. We'll tell you the AFC teams that are going to have byes this week as well, too, and we'll hit the AFC when we come back in 30 seconds. This is the Friday Football Show, the Make the Money and Run podcast. You can download and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. If you missed the live broadcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, thanks to everybody on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter for watching us live now. We're sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Cupertino. Check them out at BritanniaArmsDeanza.com, 408-252-7262. In 30 seconds, the AFC trip around the world as we get to Week 7 of the NFL, the continuation of Week 7 in the NFL, and then we'll hit college football after that. But the NFL continues with the AFC in 30 seconds on the Friday Football Show. Vasu Vaddiparty, Charlie O with you here on this Friday, October 22nd, 2021. Welcome back to the Friday Football Show. Vasu Vaddiparty, Charlie O, Make the Money and Run podcast for Friday, October 22nd. We're here every Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Mondays at 3 Eastern, Thursdays at noon Eastern, and then Fridays at 12:30 for the Friday Baseball Show, and then 1 o'clock for the Friday Football Show. Don't forget to check our social media out every day at 6 Eastern, Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends, 11 a.m. Eastern for college football. 3 times every Saturday and twice on Sundays, noon Eastern, and then 3 o'clock Eastern, 3:30 Eastern, 3 o'clock Eastern on Sundays for the NFL, for the late games, and all the NBA, NHL games as well. The baseball playoffs, we talked about that on the baseball show. Game 6 tonight for the Astros and Red Sox. Game 6 tomorrow night for the Dodgers and the Atlanta Braves. Braves and Houston looking to close out and meet in the World Series. Dodgers and Red Sox have other ideas about forcing Game 7. All right, we hit the NFC in the last segment, Charlie. Let's go to the AFC right now. Let me give you the lines on some of the games, and we'll break it down by divisions as we go. The aforementioned Bengals and Ravens. Bengals 4-2. They've already beaten Pittsburgh in the division. Baltimore Ravens 5-1. They lost. Who did they lose to? I can't remember who they lost to, but they're 5-1. 6.5-point favorite. 46.5 the total. Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, two good offenses. Defense has been kind of suspect for Cincinnati. It's been better for Baltimore, but it hasn't been great. Other AFC games, Kansas City visiting Tennessee. Tennessee comes off a big Monday night win against Buffalo, and what's your reward? You get Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. A 4.5-point underdog is Tennessee. 57.5 the total for Kansas City and Tennessee. I've watched Kansas City all year. I've watched Tennessee all year. 57.5 still seems like a lot of points for that game, Charlie. We talked about Miami, the AFC, the underdog in the interconference game against Atlanta. The Jets are a 7-point underdog coming off their bye to the Patriots. Patriots had a tough loss against the Cowboys in overtime last week, 42.5 for New England up in Foxborough. And then the Raiders are a 3-point favorite against Philadelphia, another interconference game, 48.5 the total. I kind of like the over in that game. Philadelphia's showing me some gump here with Jalen Hurts. They can run the ball a little bit. They seem like they're out there a little bit, and I think they can compete with the Raiders, even though the Raiders are tied for first in the AFC West with the Chargers, who have a bye week, by the way. We'll give you the byes in a second for your fantasy football teams. Houston, 17.5-point underdogs to the Arizona Cardinals. They were 18.5 against Buffalo last a few weeks back, and then they were 11 against the Indianapolis Colts last week, and they didn't cover any of them. The one win that they did have was against Jacksonville, I believe, and they didn't cover that game either. In Indianapolis, with their running game, Carson Wentz playing better. They're going into San Francisco on Sunday Night Football, a 4-point underdog, 43.5 the total for Sunday Night Football for the Allen Chris game on Sunday night on NBC. Charlie, your AFC thoughts?
Well, first of all, you talked about that Kansas City game. This little bit of a nugget caught my eye. Kansas City is 4-13 against the spread in their last 17 games, including the playoffs.
Right.
So that doesn't bode well. I mean, I don't know what's up with Kansas City right now.
Well, they were not. They were going to lose to Washington last week until they finally got it going in the second half. And credit Washington. I know they're not on the same talent level as the Kansas City Chiefs are, but they gave them all they could handle until the fourth quarter when Patrick Mahomes threw the two touchdowns.
They just don't look all that good to me. I'm not pleased with them. With the way they're playing, I don't feel confident in Kansas City. I don't think they feel confident in themselves right now.
Defensively, they certainly don't feel confident right now the way they're playing.
So that's an interesting game. Now, do I think they'll win that game? Yeah, probably, because when you play the Titans, it all depends on what you do to Derrick Henry.
That's what you got to do. I haven't seen Kansas City stop anybody yet, and something tells me Derrick Henry is not going to be stopped by that Kansas City defense that hasn't played well all year.
And let's face it, Derrick Henry started off the season a little slow. He's not slow now. Derrick Henry has revved it up, and now he's playing like Derrick Henry. So would I be surprised that Kansas City would limp out of there with a loss? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So that wouldn't surprise me at all. Cincinnati, Baltimore, there's a game where I can see that one would go under the total. Neither one of those teams are what I would consider explosive. And I think they're just going to battle each other in that particular game.
I don't think either defense has played well, and I think it's going to be a little bit of points. I think Joe Burrow's shown that he can get the ball to his outside receivers. He's got tight end play. They've got Mixon in the backfield. Baltimore hasn't played great defense this year. They've given up a lot of points. They did play well against the Chargers last week, but that was really their first complete if I remember right, that was really their first defensive game that they played last week against the Chargers.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Jets, Patriots. If you need a nap, start watching that game. That'd be exciting. Who knows what that game's going to be. Two rookie quarterbacks, everybody trying to figure out what's what, and so we'll find out what's going there. That'll be trying to go on and figure out what's happening in that game. Eagles Raiders. Now I'm interested in this game because I'm interested to see whether or not I'm really not interested in the Eagles, to be honest with you. Our guys, as you know, I work for ESPN 1320 up here in Sac, and one of our sibling stations is in Philly,
right?
And they just said Philly's a hot mess, which they tell us every year, but even more so than what it's been in a while. But they said they're not really concerned about that. New coaching regime, Hurts is just trying to get in, and they didn't really have all that high of expectations for them this season, because whenever you change over, there's always some problems. They think everything will gel together, and that really they're looking at next season for to be their springboard. I'm interested to see, after the way the Raiders performed last week, which I thought was amazing. We all thought, oh man, the Raiders, they're just going to fall apart on the field after the Gruden thing.
But then I watched Denver play last night, and now it's not so surprising.
Yeah, but still, everybody, and I thought the definitive there was Vasu. I don't remember where it was listening to, but one of the linemen was interviewed this week, and he said, I didn't even know Gruden had resigned until Tuesday when I showed back up for for practice, because he said, when I leave the game on Sunday, I turn off all sports. All I do is go home and watch Netflix. So I didn't even know Gruden was gone. And I showed up and I said, okay, Gruden's gone. Let's go to work.
Yeah.
So we tend to, in the press, make these huge deals out of,
no, not us.
Yeah. Us. Gruden's gone, Now, it is a big story because of Gruden and what he did. Okay, don't let me minimize that. But to the players, it was, we still have coaches, we still have games to play, we still have talent, and they went out and played. Now, I am going to be interested to see how the coaching staff is able to do with them now in this next game, because I think this will show us kind of how they're going to play out the rest of the season. I actually have kind of high expectations for them, because a lot of the players post-game said they were very happy about the way the whole attitude was on the sidelines. People were getting yelled at. People were getting cussed at. Frankly, it sounded like they weren't missing Chucky. And, it's a different generation of guys. And that was one of the things we talked about. One of the things I talked a lot about when they brought Gruden back, when you have that big a time frame between when a guy leaves and a guy comes back, sometimes the game runs away from you. And one of the things that can run away is the style of the players. And I just think that his style may have been running really thin with that team. And so they just may not miss him. And if they do well this week, we're going to go, okay, they're not missing him at all. Watch the Raiders.
It's going to be interesting to see for your fantasy football players and you wagers this weekend. The Buffalo Bills, one of the top teams in the AFC, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Jacksonville Jaguars all have weekends off. So get your rosters all set up for those 4 buys. All right, we hit the AFC now. Buffalo 4-2. We said they got the bye this week. I still think they're better than 4-2. The 2 losses they've had to Tennessee on the road last week. That defense did not look good last week, and that's something that they will fix in this bye week, and they will come back. And whoever they have in week 8, I'm looking at it right now, they're going to have the Miami Dolphins at home in week 8 coming off a bye. Who knows? Deshaun Watson might be the quarterback by then for the Miami Dolphins. Not that we're speculating. We're not the first ones to bring that up because that's already been talked about.
I know, but press. I don't think so.
New England, New York Jets, who beat Tennessee, by the way, one of the 2 losses Tennessee has, and Miami 1-5, really off to a terrible start as the Miami Dolphins. Baltimore 5-1, the best record in the AFC. Cincinnati 4-2. They play each other. Cleveland with a win last night, 4-3. Pittsburgh has their bye. They're 3-3 going into this bye weekend. Tennessee 4-2. Indianapolis, Houston, and Jacksonville 2-4, 1-5 apiece for Houston and Jacksonville. And then the AFC West, the most intriguing division. At the beginning, we thought the NFC West was going to be the most intriguing division, but right now the AFC West is the most intriguing division. The Chargers have a bye. The Raiders have Philadelphia. Kansas City will be at Tennessee, as we said, and then Denver lost last night. They're 3-4. They lost last night to Cleveland. Chargers have the bye week. Both teams are 4-2 for first place, so one or the other will be in first place by a half a game after this weekend with the Chargers bye. So from that standpoint, what division besides the AFC West? Obviously, every team in that division is intriguing because really Denver's only a game back. If whoever loses on Sunday if Vegas loses, they're only a game back of Vegas for second place and only 2 games back of the Chargers with 10 weeks to go, Charlie.
Yeah, I would have to say the AFC West is the one that I'm watching because I think it's pretty intriguing. Yeah. The Chargers and then all of a sudden the Raiders. If the Chiefs would win this week, then you go, okay, now it's interesting.
Yeah.
If they lose, then you go, eh. But I think it's pretty interesting that the Chargers Raiders, also given just the history, although nobody gives a rip about that, and that really doesn't mean anything to the current situation, just because the history of it would be fun. But I think that's shaping up to be a pretty interesting dance. If the Raiders do well this weekend, so that'll be kind of fun. And then in the North, the AFC North, you've got Cleveland, Cincinnati right there, and Baltimore. Baltimore's had a tradition of later in the season stumbling.
Yeah,
and so if they live up to their tradition of getting into November and December and stumbling, bumbling, and losing, we could get a really compact standings there and have a run to the finish. So that could be interesting as well.
By the way, Baltimore, their only loss of the year was on opening night on Monday night to the Raiders in overtime. And they've won 5 in a row since then. The Bengals are 4-2. They have won their last game. They lost the week before. And then Cleveland at 4-3. I still think the AFC North is very intriguing, even with the Pittsburgh Steelers there. I know the Roethlisberger situation is very tenuous, but Najee Harris running the ball pretty well. The defense played pretty well against Seattle last week. I know it wasn't Russell Wilson, it was Geno Smith, but still, that's going to be an interesting division. It's a little upside down from where the prognosticators had them. Everybody thought Pittsburgh and Cleveland were going to be the top 2, and Baltimore would have been the third team. Baltimore's come out and played well. 170 points for Baltimore scored in their 6 games, 123 given up. The Bengals have scored 148, but they've only given up 111 points, and their differentials plus 47 for Baltimore to plus 37 for the Cincinnati Bengals. That's not that big of a difference, and I think they're a lot closer than people think, and I think Cincinnati is going to show some people this weekend. Would I take the 6.5? Well, stay tuned at 6 o'clock Eastern to find out if we're going to do it, or on Sunday for the NFL, because there's still a lot of work to look into that defense and into that game based on how the Bengals have played and based on how the Ravens have played. The Ravens are hot right now. They've got the best record in the AFC. A lot of 4-2 teams: Chargers, Vegas, Tennessee, Cincinnati, and Buffalo as well too. So all 4-2, and looking up to the Baltimore Ravens at 5-1. So very interesting. NFL Week 7 coming up. It all got started with Denver and Cleveland last night. Still think Denver should have won that game last night. They looked bad in the third and fourth quarter. They were not able to stop Cleveland when they needed to, especially on the run game. A couple of third downs that they gave up, and Teddy Bridgewater throws an interception in the end zone that really cost them a chance at even a field goal to maybe tie. The game maybe tied and gone into overtime. Who knows what happens there? Or to chance to get a touchdown and maybe have a lead at the end, because Cleveland's offense, even though they won and their defense played okay, I think it was more on Denver's ill fate game plan and the way they executed, or lack of execution yesterday, that cost them the game. And it wasn't really anything that Cleveland did. I do give credit to Johnson and his 140 yards, in case Keenum did get the victory. But the fact is that Denver, to me, the AFC West is better than the AFC North right now, top to bottom. And I thought Denver had a chance to win that game. And Bridgewater usually doesn't lose you games, but he lost that game last night, especially with that interception in the middle of the game. All right, when we come back in 30 seconds, we will have the NCAA wrap for you this weekend. Lots of good games. Top 25 teams who are underdogs on the point spread against non-top 25 teams. And people are thinking that that's an automatic, oh, they're an underdog, they're going to win. That's not the case. We've got some teams for you to look at here in college football. And our intern, Nic Robinson, will join us as well with his unique takes on player props and college football. He's a big Oregon guy. I'm going to have to listen. I'm going to have to not listen to him when he talks about Oregon now, because the last two times, I'm just kidding, Nick, but the way the fandom cannot envelop himself like a nauseous gas into the seeping of the wagering arena, as they say. I know I've worded that badly, but you get the idea of what I'm talking about. Here.
What in the world are you saying?
We'll be back in 30 seconds with the college football wrap up for the weekend and the preview for this weekend coming up. Back in 30, the Make the Money and Run Friday football show with Vasu Vaddiparty, Charlie O. We'll see you in 30 seconds with Nic Robinson, our intern, coming up. Welcome back to the Make the Money and Run podcast, Friday football show. Vasu Vaddiparty, Charlie O here. We just ran through the NFL weekend. We reviewed the Denver-Cleveland game. We previewed this week in the NFL in terms of some of the big games that are going on. Obviously, the biggest game, Cincinnati-Baltimore in that AFC North. Chargers are off this weekend. The Raiders have Philadelphia. And then, of course, in the NFC, Green Bay, Washington, Chicago, Tampa Bay, two of the bigger games in the NFC. Don't forget, you can download and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. Look for the Make the Money and Run symbol. Download and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast if you missed the live show on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. And if you're on with us live right now, you see our intern, Nic Robinson. Hello, Nick. How are you?
Fantastic. How are you two doing?
What's going on in the world of Nic Robinson, Oregon-wise?
Just doing some school, hanging out on campus. It's nice to be back with everyone, mostly everyone, and the protocol's going away slowly, so enjoying my senior year.
All right, well, let's get to it, Charlie and Nick. The top 25 this weekend. I'm looking through the top 25 games, and there's a number of games where the ranked team is the underdog coming into this weekend. Wisconsin, Purdue, the biggest one that we talked about yesterday, Charlie. Wisconsin, after their game off of Army last week, a tough physical game against Army last week. They're a 3.5-point favorite at Purdue. Oh, by the way, Purdue just beat number two Iowa in Iowa City last weekend, and they're a 2.5 or 3.5 point underdog, depending on where you look at it. Oregon is an underdog at UCLA for Nick. UCLA, a 2-point favorite against Oregon. Oregon has had all sorts of trouble holding on to the ball this year. There are a couple of games that they should have won that came out to be bad. Pittsburgh, here's an interesting game. Pittsburgh and Clemson. Clemson, 3.5 point underdog. They cannot score this year. And Pitt has had a really good year. They're 23rd in the nation. Air Force is favored by 3 over number 22, San Diego State. There's another ranked team that's an underdog. And then Notre Dame, a 7-point favorite over USC. Texas A&M, 19.5 over South Carolina. And then North Carolina State, a small 3.5-point favorite over Miami. So in these top 25 games, and then Tulane got blown out by SMU last night, 55-26. The upset on Wednesday, Coastal Carolina at number 14. Loses to Appalachian State 30-27 on Wednesday night. We were all entrenched with baseball. We completely forgot that Coastal Carolina matters in NCAA football right now, but maybe not after that loss on Wednesday night, Charlie.
Appalachian State. Now, if memory serves me, that's their second major upset that they've handed out this season. So nobody wants to play them anymore.
No.
This is a team that's going in. If you're ranked, you don't want to see. So Coastal Carolina, that kind of punches a hole in their season. But hey, when when you're on. Ask Clemson. Being on top doesn't last forever. So ask Alabama. You're out there and life looks good, and then somebody comes along like Appalachian State and says, "Hey, hello."
Nick, what games you looking at this week in terms of the top 25? We'll hit some of the individual ones, but some of the other ones I've seen. Wake Forest has had a good year. They're undefeated. They're a 3-point favorite at Army. Penn State 23.5 over Illinois. Michigan playing well this year, 23.5 over Northwestern. Kansas is a 38.5-point underdog at home to Oklahoma. And Desmond Ridder put himself in the Heisman race. Number 2 Cincinnati Bearcats are 28 on the road at Navy. Going into Navy, I'm going to feel bad for Navy right now because I got a bad feeling for Navy this weekend. Alabama 25 against Tennessee, and that wraps up the top 25. But what games are you looking at?
So for me, I love San Diego State this week. They're undefeated right now, and they look very, very good. And I know Air Force has also been fantastic, and they usually just grind out the clock. But I think that San Diego State can get ahead of them big here, and they're underdogs at plus 140. So I'm taking that all day. And then also, if you want to parlay the over, I never really like overs in Air Force because Army and Air Force, they always just run, never throw. But it's set at 39. And looking in the past, they've kind of crushed the overs against kind of higher paced teams in San Diego State. Obviously not as slow paced as Air Force. So I like the over of 39 as well. That's a little sneaky. And in another game, I actually like the one you were talking about before. Wisconsin-Purdue is a huge matchup. And I can't see how Purdue is like favored to lose right now after that huge win last week. So I think they're going to ride that wave, especially at home against Wisconsin, who's 3-3. So I think that's a huge value in Purdue.
Let's hit the Big Ten a little bit, Charlie. Purdue, Wisconsin, we're talking about Purdue, the home underdog to Wisconsin. Wisconsin has not had a great year. Michigan has had a terrific year against Northwestern. Northwestern had the big win last week, 23.5 there, according to what I have. Penn State, Illinois, we know how bad Illinois is, but they can come up and bite you. Ask Nebraska. Maryland, Minnesota. Ohio State is going to Indiana. Which Indiana team is going to show up? Obviously, Penix Jr. not there. Indiana played a tough game against Michigan State last week. So our Big Ten expert, Charlie O. This Purdue-Wisconsin game really intrigues me, Charlie. But the other games there, Ohio State, Indiana, also looks to be pretty interesting as well too.
Oh yeah, and I agree with Nick. I'm going to put a play on that game, and I'm going Purdue all the way. I'm still shocked that Wisconsin is the favorite going in there after the way Purdue played. And Wisconsin they've been sluggish all season long. I feel like they have been given a lot of favor based on history. And sometimes you get that and that's okay, but this has just not been the Badgers' year. And the Boilermakers right now are hot. And again, I talked about it the other day. Nick, you weren't with us, but playing at Purdue is a very, very intimidating place because in that stadium, the bleachers come right down to the field, and everybody is right on top of you. So it's a very raucous crowd on top of having a very good team. So it's a very intimidating place to play. So I'm liking Purdue. I'm liking the fact that they're hot, and that's there. Ohio State, Indiana. Come on, Indiana's riding the wave of last year.
3-touchdown favorite on the road, though, Charlie.
I wouldn't play that game. I wouldn't play that game. Ohio State's been too Jekyll and Hyde for me to take 21 points. But Ohio State's going to win that game. I mean, that's there. I'm going to watch the Michigan Northwestern score. I wouldn't take Michigan with that point spread, but Michigan at 6-0, it's very interesting. All of a sudden, Harbaugh's not going to get fired this year. What a shock that's going to be. That's very interesting there to see what's going on there. Penn State, they'll probably run all over Illinois. I mean, Illinois is terrible.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on to the ACC here. Sorry, Charlie, but let's get to the ACC. One of the big games I'm really interested to see. Clemson's had a tough time scoring this year. That was evidence off a bye week. They didn't do anything against Syracuse at Syracuse a week ago today, last Friday night. They were a 2-touchdown favorite at Syracuse, and that was a close game, a 3-point game. Pittsburgh has had a really good year, and they're 3.5-point favorite against Clemson. I just can't see how Clemson's going to stay in this game. This is a situation where a team with the name, if you didn't know the names on the helmets and they were blank helmets, and you saw the players and you saw both teams play and didn't know who they were, this might be a 2-touchdown point spread for Pittsburgh right now because they can run the ball. Their offensive line is really good. Their defense has come up big. They went into Virginia Tech. It's not easy to go into Virginia Tech and blow the Hokies out, and they blew the Hokies out last week. I think they ran for 250 or 300 yards at Virginia Tech. I'm looking at that ACC. That's the ACC game I'm looking at this week, Pitt and Clemson. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that one. I don't know how Pitt is not favored by more, especially after Clemson squeaked by Syracuse by a thread. And, Clemson's averaging 20.5 points per game, which is downright pathetic for their team. In the past, they've had a lot of good recruits. And I'm not saying they don't have young talent, but you can just tell that they're not there this year in comparison to last year. So I'm taking Pitt all the way at -160. And I'm not surprised it's not -7 or even higher because I get Clemson as a good defense and they've let up 12 points per game, but Pitt's scoring around 48 per game. Their offense is absolutely firing from all cylinders. So I'm taking Pitt all the way, the team that's rolling.
Charlie, it took me all of last year when Clemson was good to this year. They're not very good for me to pronounce Uiagalelele, and he hasn't done anything yet. So they're there right there in the ACC. Took me all last year. People. I figure if people can't pronounce my last name, it's only fair for me to be able to pronounce their name as well too. The other ACC game I'm looking at, Wake Forest at Army. Wake Forest, a 3-point favorite. We know Army played a tough game against Wisconsin, Charlie, but this Wake Forest team, they got something going on over there in Wake Forest land.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to talk about Wake Forest having something going on other than basketball. Really. You're going, Wake Forest, really? But Army. Army's going to grind it out, and that's the problem is they're going to have time of possession. So you've got to factor that in. But I think Wake will prevail there in that game ultimately because they're a really talented team. I want to jump back to that Clemson game for just a minute.
Yeah,
because Clemson is all about defense. They can't score, and that's their downfall. The problem is going to be for Clemson in that game is going to be that the defense is going to have to be on the field too long, and that's going to wear them down, and that's why they're going to lose.
All right, let's move on to the Big 12. Vasu Vaddiparty, Charlie O, Nic Robinson, our intern here, the Make the Money and Run Friday football show. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter Live. If you miss any of it, you can download this show, any other show on any of your podcasting outlets, Apple, Google, iHeart, Spotify, SoundCloud. We had our Friday baseball show earlier as well, too. And you can download, subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. Don't forget, 6 Eastern, we'll have our daily picks out there, latest news and daily picks for Friday, and then Saturdays and Sundays by 11 Eastern, Sunday by noon Eastern to catch all the NCAA NFL action this weekend, sponsored by Britannia Arms of Cupertino. Check out all your viewing pleasure, all the British food and British pub drinking establishment that you want, and Cupertino, 408-252-7262, BritanniaArmsDeanza.com. 20 TVs there. They will cater your office parties, and they will set up your group events there as well too. All right, that out of the way. Big 12, the only interesting game for me in the Big 12 this weekend, Oklahoma State, a 7-point underdog, ranked number 6 in the country. Is that right? Am I reading that right? Number 8 in the country against Iowa State. Iowa State gets off to a slow start in the beginning of the year, but they've had 2 great games in the last few weeks where they've run the ball. Brock Purdy, their senior quarterback. Oklahoma State came back on Texas last week. I think it was last week they came back on Texas. Texas gives up a lot of points, and they don't have a very good defense. And you can see Oklahoma State just playing a little bit back there. They were down 17-0, and the defense showed up there. What about Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Charlie, do you think in the Big 12 here? Because that's a very intriguing matchup to me, and this will tell us a lot about Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that I wouldn't have Oklahoma State as the favorite if they were going to be in Oklahoma. I think that's one of those games where the home team has the advantage. I think it's going to be a great game. I'm so indecisive about that game. I'm not going to play that game, but I'm going to watch that game. I think it's going to be really, really entertaining. So I'm ready to watch it and see what goes on.
Go ahead, Nick.
As Charlie said, this is going to be a really, really entertaining game, but I can't see myself not taking plus 220 at on Oklahoma State after they came away 3 straight weeks defeating top 25 teams. That's very, very impressive. I know Iowa State's been on a roll as well, but Oklahoma State just looks fantastic. And at plus 220 odds, even plus seven might be one of the best bets of the week, I think, because it's going to be a close game. I think, in my opinion, it's a field goal game. So either plus 220, in my opinion, or plus 7 might be a lock.
Oklahoma, Kansas, Kansas State, Texas Tech, West Virginia, TCU, who lost to Oklahoma last week, 4.5-point favorite against West Virginia at home. Oklahoma laying 38.5 to Kansas. Let's move on with our intern, Nic Robinson, Charlie O, Vasu Vaddiparty here on the Make the Money and Run Friday football show. Let's get to the SEC first. We'll hit the Pac-12 last, but the SEC got some interesting games this week. Matt Corral may not play for Ole Miss this weekend. They're still a 9-point favorite against LSU. We know all the stuff about Coach O. He's going to be separating from LSU at the end of the year. A lot of people think it was Joe Burrow that led that team, and it wasn't really a lot of his coaching 2 years ago in the national championship. That to me is the interesting game of the weekend. Obviously, CBS thinks so too. It's their main game. Ole Miss at number 12, about an 8 to 9 point favorite over LSU. Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, so I actually think LSU is pretty interesting here. I like LSU spread at +8. I also think this is going to be a really close game, and I think they're going to play hard for their coach. I think they're going to play really hard. So I think they come out firing. I know Ole Miss has been fantastic, but I think LSU just has the tendency to show up out of nowhere when they get counted out.
Charlie, that basketball offense that Ole Miss has that Lane Kiffin is doing, I don't know if it's good or bad. We don't know if Corral's going to play or not. I don't know much about their backup quarterback, but LSU was a 2-touchdown underdog to Florida last week at home, and they ended up beating them by a touchdown last week. So you think they take that momentum on the road into Starkville? Starkville? No, where's Ole Miss at? I forget where Ole Miss is at. Jacksonville, I guess, is where they're at. I don't know. Anyway, I haven't been to Mississippi in a long time, so I don't know exactly what.
I've never been to Mississippi, so I have no clue.
All right, so I think Starkville is Mississippi State. So whatever is not Starkville is Ole Miss. But anyway, thoughts on LSU Ole Miss this weekend? That to me it seems to be the big game in the SEC. Alabama, Tennessee.
I think it'll be an interesting game. I never bet on Lane Kiffin because every time I do, he kills me. I love the offense. I think it's very interesting. But it's very inconsistent, so I don't think you can count on it. I tend to agree with Nick in the fact that I think the LSU players will step up for Coach O. I think guys like to play for him. I do not agree with that it was all Joe Burrow that got them to the national championship. Orgeron did a nice job at USC when he took over there. It's a hot mess, and I understand all that, but that doesn't mean he's not a good coach. And so, you beat Florida. Congratulations. Now you're out of here. Okay. Way to go. But I would not count LSU out in this game. I really would not.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. Alabama, Tennessee, Alabama, more than a 3-touchdown favorite. They've come out like gangbusters after the loss to Texas A&M 2 weeks ago. Speaking of the Aggies, they're number 17 in the country. They've got South Carolina. Might be a low spread here and might be something to look at. 19.5 for Texas A&M over South Carolina. All right, we move on to the Pac-12 here on the Friday Football Show. Our intern, Nic Robinson here. We are going to talk some Pac-12 football right now. Washington, Arizona tonight. Washington 17.5-point favorite on the road at Arizona. They just lost to UCLA last weekend. Don't know how Washington, Charlie and I talked about this yesterday. Don't know how Washington was favored against UCLA last week, even though they were at home. UCLA got the win. Oregon barely got by Cal last Friday night as well, too. Oregon, UCLA, clearly the game of the week there in the Pac-12 from a conference standpoint. Of course, USC, Notre Dame. Notre Dame about a 7-point favorite in South Bend against USC. BYU is out of the top 25 now after their 2 losses that they had, including last week against Baylor. Washington State is a 4.5-point underdog there. Oregon State is going up against Utah. I think a lot of people were surprised, Charlie, that Arizona State did not play well in that game. Utah's a really good team. They can run the ball. They were a 3-point favorite. They went after Arizona State, and they really beat them up big time. But right now, as far as the Pac-12 goes, this looks to me like the top North team, Oregon, and UCLA probably is the top South team. And they're going at it, UCLA at 1 or 2 point favorite, depending on where you go. We'll let Nick have all the Oregon talk. You can talk about UCLA, Charlie.
Oh, yeah. So, first off, the Oregon game. I feel like this is a trap game for us, so I'm not touching this. As a fan of Oregon and a student, I'm just going to let it ride. And I'm having
Charlie,
some.
we used to do this on radio. Mark the tape that he's not taking Oregon. We don't have the tape machine anymore like we used to back in the old days. But mark the tape on that. He's not touching Oregon. He's been burned the last 2 weeks with Stanford and Cal.
I got the yellow pencil out, baby.
You got the little razor blade too. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think our quarterback situation is a little iffy. The entire team has been playing well, but of course, the quarterback runs through the quarterback, and you need to be able to throw the ball more than 10 yards. And Anthony Brown's been checking down, throwing to his running back, handing it off. He hasn't even attempted like a 40-plus yard pass in a few weeks, which is I don't think you can beat UCLA that way. So I hope we win, obviously, but I'm not touching this game as a bettor. And if I were to be a bettor, honestly, I would probably take UCLA money line.
UCLA can run the ball, Charlie. They've had a good year. The 2 losses they've had have been really the Fresno State loss. That really was out of nowhere. And then I forgot who else they lost to, but who else did UCLA lose to? Do you know, Nick?
Let me check.
I don't know. Well, Nick looks up at that. Your thoughts on UCLA, Charlie? Go ahead. Sorry, Nick.
ASU, Arizona State.
Oh, right. Okay, that's right.
Okay. Let me tell you what I think about this game. I think this is exactly the kind of game that UCLA loses. They get built up. It's going to be in the Rose Bowl. Everybody's looking at it. Oregon, oh, man, Oregon, and they get all built up. And this is the kind of game where UCLA just comes in and pukes all over themselves. You know, I mean, this is exactly the kind of game why people hate UCLA. I don't know why it is that they do these kind of things. Now, I'm not putting any money down on this game, but this feels to me just like one of those games where UCLA comes in and just lays an egg. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's because they haven't played together well enough yet to have the kind of confidence to do it, but I just don't have a good feeling about them coming in and standing up and making this happen for them. I really don't.
Oregon State 2-1 atop the North Division of the Pac-12. Utah 3-0. Utah Oregon State plays this weekend. That's a big game as well too, as big as UCLA as Oregon. UCLA 3-1. Arizona State 3-1. All looking up to Utah 3-0. in conference, and then Oregon State, Washington State at 3-2, and then Stanford, Washington, Cal to round out, and then USC, Colorado, Arizona round out the South Conference as well. All right, Nick, we did it. College football weekend. We'll see you at 6 Eastern on social media with your picks. We'll look forward to that, and then don't forget by 11 a.m. And noon Eastern on Saturday and Sunday for NFL and NCAA picks, okay?
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Okay, Nick. Have fun.
Nick,
have a good
good to see
weekend.
you,
We'll
buddy.
talk to you later.
Study hard.
All right, our intern Nic Robinson with some good information with us on there. We got Game 6 of the American League Championship Series tonight, the NLCS tomorrow night, Week 7 of the NFL college football, big games this weekend as we roll through the end of October, getting into November. We'll start thinking about championship statuses here and conference championships as well too, Charlie. So that's going to do it for us. The Make the Money and Run podcast Friday football show for October 22nd, 2021. Don't forget, you can download and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts if you missed the live broadcast. We're here every Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We're sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Cupertino, Silicon Valley's longest-serving British pub and restaurant, celebrating 40 years of the best food and drink. BritanniaArmsDeanza.com, 408-252-7262. And don't forget, every day, Monday through Friday, 6 Eastern on social media, we'll have the latest news and our selections for each day. And as we just said, Saturdays and Sundays, 3 times on Saturday starting 11 a.m. Eastern, Sunday noon Eastern, twice on Sundays. NBA, NHL picks as well too, selections as well too, as well as the NFL and NCAA. And of course, we got baseball this weekend too. We're going to have a World Series entrance by the time we come back on Monday at 3 o'clock for the Make the Money and Run podcast. All right, for Charlie O, I'm Vasu Vaddiparty. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your games. Good luck. And we will talk to you on Monday at 3 o'clock Eastern on the podcast. And don't forget to check out our social media at 6 Eastern today for the latest news and our selections for Friday. Take care, everybody.